In 1978, Susan Orbach wrote a book called Fat is a Feminist Issue. I think it's just brought up feminists. He's going to have a good laugh at the feminists' expense now, because that's what we all do, isn't it? We have a good laugh at the feminists' expense. Going to show us some pictures now of some really obscene, the obese Jabba the Hutt-like figure, and holding a sign saying, "I'm not fat, I'm beautiful, and you should all desire me." I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually say, she was right. Fat is a women's issue. Fat is a genuine women's issue. I haven't read the book. I don't know what conclusions it draws. Fat is a women's issue. There's genuinely societal differences between men and women that make fat particularly disadvantageous for women. And one of the things is, if you're a fat woman, there are two kinds of people in the world. They're the ones that will admit that you're fat, and there's those that like you. The people that admit you're fat are going to use the fact that you're fat to put you down as a way of insulting you. Your friends, on the other hand, if you want to talk to them about the fact that you're fat and you're trying to work out what causes you fat, they're going to deny that you're fat. They're going to say, "No, you're not fat. You're not fat. That's not fat. You're gorgeous." Which actually just makes you feel even more insecure about it, because it means you never really know what the truth is, because you know people are lying to you. So there's going to be some fat men watching this, I dare say. Oh, hold on. Being fat's been a negative thing for me too, you know. I've been like Piggy in Lord of the Flies. I've been picked on for being fat before. I was always picked last for the football teams. It affects my sense of self-worth, but there is a difference about the way we talk about it. We don't have a problem with admitting that a man's fat and a man's fat. If your male friend says to you, "I'm fat," then there isn't like an uncomfortable silence where we all cough and then say, I wouldn't say that you're fat entirely. Try to find a way around talking around it. But admit to it. As I say, the people that don't like you, if you're fat, they'll just say, perhaps you need to diet more. They don't really have a lot of helpful suggestions. Their suggestions are kind of quick fix suggestions, like go on a diet, or perhaps you should exercise, do some aerobics. They're quick fix suggestions that might not get to the root of your problem. The root of your problem is obsessive eating, perhaps, because your low self-esteem leads to compulsive eating. So, yeah, I think that is a legitimate women's issue. It may not be a feminist issue in that it doesn't require a patriarchy theory to understand it. You just actually have to look genuinely at how the sexes are treated differently in society. You don't need a sociological theory to back that up. I think that's why I've always never really had a problem with it. Sometimes I get, it's particularly women, you know, it's particularly women that want to post the body acceptance feminists on the Facebook wall. And I say, what's this got to do with men's issues? It's got absolutely nothing to do with men's issues. Leave it alone. It has nothing to do with men's issues. The body positive movement has nothing to do with men's issues. In fact, sometimes the body positive movement actually does talk about men's issues in terms of things like steroid abuse, which is a men's issue. So they're not harmful to us. As a group of feminists, or as a feminist issue to talk about, them talking about it is not harmful to us in any way. It's rather interesting that it is obviously women in a men's rights group that are bringing it up. They're not really there for the men's rights. It's not the women that are actually interested in men's rights. It's the ones that just hate feminists. And of course, the reason they want to bring it up is because they want to assert their own dominance in the female hierarchy. And what we're seeing there is toxic femininity again. It's toxic femininity. I'm so much more beautiful than her. Look at the ugly girl. Everyone laugh at the ugly girl, because then it asserts their superiority in the female hierarchy. I don't give a shit about that. Like that. I mean, as long as she's not insisting that I fall in love with her, I'm not going to. Not on the grounds of her looks, certainly. I have loved a fat girl. I've been very, very, very in love with a fat girl once. And I did not love her because of her fat. I loved her because she was very funny. And because she was a genius at cryptic crosswords. And she had a very pretty face. And actually, it did come up when we started falling out of love. She did accuse me that it was because she was fat. And of course, well, no, she didn't. She said, it's because I'm fat and ugly, isn't it? And she wasn't ugly at all. She was beautiful. But I couldn't deny she was fat. So all I could say when she said, it's because I'm fat and ugly, isn't it? I just say, you're not ugly. And of course, I didn't even really know why I'd fallen out about that. This is a little bit personal story. It turned out she cheated on me. So because she wasn't being open with me in the way she had been. Because she was lying to me, she wasn't making eye contact. It was long, things like that. There was body language difference. Because she was lying to me about the fact that she cheated on me. And that was really why I fell out of love with her. And I didn't know. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that something was wrong. I was in a very difficult situation then when she turned around and said, because I'm fat and ugly, I could very firmly state she wasn't ugly. But I couldn't deny that she was fat, because she was fat. I felt very guilty about that for a long time. It was at least 12 years later, if not 15 years later, that came up in counselling. I spoke about the guilt I felt about that, where it made me feel very uncomfortable risking going into relationships with people unless I was 100% sure they were perfect in every way. As the counsellor pointed out, well, she must have known. She must have known that she was fat, and that's not your fault. She put you in that situation. She knew that's something you couldn't deny. So throwing that at me, the suggestion that the only reason that I wasn't in love with her was because she was fat, was a retaliation. It was a retaliation because she was feeling hurt, and she wanted to make me feel responsible for her hurt, and she knew that I wouldn't be able to deny it. I mean, she should have known that she had been fat the whole time we'd been together. The girl I'd fallen in love with was fat, so it clearly wasn't that. I'm not going to talk about that because this isn't going to be one of those videos where I talk about my relationships again. Don't get me sidelined into that. No, because I wanted to talk about failure. I want to talk about failure as a men's issue, and there's a great similarity with it. And in my midlife crisis, I wanted to talk about my failure to launch. Ron Fowles talks about this, boys' failure to launch. And I wanted to talk about my failure to launch. I wanted to talk about why I hadn't achieved very much of my life. I'd had a lot of jobs that had been dead-end jobs. I mean, a lot of jobs which I hadn't been able to progress in. And then I'd moved on to a different sort of like career area. So I was always at entry level. The job I chose, I was always at entry level. And I never really climbed, failed to climb. I needed to talk about that. And the fact of the matter was that those who were my friends, those who liked me, were saying, no, you're not a failure. You're not a failure. Don't be silly. You're not a failure. And the people that would actually say you're a failure were saying that to insult me. They were saying that to put me down. And this made it very difficult to talk about. But there's a parallel between women and fatness and men and failure. That if you're a man and you're a failure, the only people that are prepared to say you're a failure are the ones that want to hurt you. And your friends are in denial. They don't want you to face up to the fact that you're a failure. They try and prevent you from facing up to the fact you're a failure. And this impacts on modern socialism and the problem of class consciousness because I'm not working class. I'll talk about socialism, but I'm not working class. Both my parents are teachers. I had a university education. My poverty has got nothing to do with me being working class. I'm middle class. I'm just a failure. Which makes it very hard. There's no sort of failure consciousness. We don't have class consciousness as failures. When you're working class, you have class consciousness. You know, you're working class, you're proud working class. Talk about the disadvantages. But it's still economic disadvantages that mean that a lot of us are failing. There's not a small number of people failing. There's a lot of people failing in society right now. There's a company that I was doing work for, and they haven't paid me in 3 months. They're way behind on their payments. I don't want to talk how much it is. It's money I could really do right now. And the reason they haven't paid me is they've gone under. So they failed too. And I was speaking to the guy who runs the company just yesterday, and he talks about another company that he was getting work through because they were a company that organised events, and that company's gone under. So it's not as if I'm alone. I'm in a chain of failure. There's a failure above me, and there's a failure above them. There's a chain of failure going on. I'm not alone right now in failing. And one of the reasons that company is failing is because it's a luxury good. It sounds luxury goods because it's in entertainment. And entertainment's a luxury good. And if there's no disposable income in the system, there's no market. Without disposable income, there's no market. So why is there no disposable income? Well, there's no disposable income because there's not much protection on wages. Why is there no protection on wages? There's no union. Why is there no union? There's no class consciousness. Why is there no class consciousness? Because the reason we're poor isn't because we're working class. It's because we're failures. No one wants to admit to being a failure. And we blame failures, don't we? It's very easy to blame the failure. They are the undeserving poor. Failures are the undeserving poor because the reason they're failures is because they haven't worked hard enough. Or the reason they are failures is because they're stupid. Or the reason they're failures is because they just weren't go-getting. They just weren't competitive enough. There's got to be something wrong with them. When somebody's a failure, there's something wrong with them. Which means that we're all individuals. We'll see ourselves as individuals, and therefore in competition with each other. There's no sense of class consciousness amongst failures. And that means that we're weaker. We're weaker than the old working class used to be. Because the working class used to feel they were all in it together. They could demand higher wages. Part of the union. So now you're saying, well, why is that a men's issue then? Why is that not? That's a person's issue, surely. Women are failures too. There are women that are failures. Yeah, there are. It's exactly the same as the fat. There are men that are fat. And yeah, it is an issue for them too. But it's not an issue in the same way. And that's why there is a similarity between fat being a feminist issue and failure being a men's rights issue. And this really comes down to the traditional conjugal roles of men as breadwinners and women as housewives. Women don't pin their self-worth on how they do financially in the same way that men do. They don't pin their self-worth on how good they are at being providers in the same way that men do. And because of that, their first concern is not that they're workers, but that they're consumers. The majority of consumer spending, I think 80% of consumer spending is done by women. Women spend more money than they earn. So men earn more money than they spend because the money goes from the men to the women and then they spend it. So it means women see themselves as consumers. And so the argument against raising the minimum wage is, well, it can put prices up, which is a great deterrent to people that see themselves as consumers, even though it's not actually true. There isn't a link between prices and minimum wage setting. This is particularly true when couples divorce. And he's a deadbeat dad because he's not been able to provide money via child's maintenance or alimony. So he's failing to provide. Bad man famous to provide. So she actually hates him. She hates him because he's not doing his provision. They're not on the same side anymore because they're not a couple. She still sees herself as a consumer. So the last thing she wants is for the prices in the shops to go up. And the majority of voters are women. A greater proportion of voting is done by women than men. And the politicians need to appeal to the voters. So she's going to actually be against rises in minimum wage because she knows it's going to put the prices up, shouldn't the prices going up. Or rather, she's been told it's going to put the prices up. And she'll believe it. Why take the risk? Why is he not providing them money? because the wages are so low. Except that's not what she's going to see. She's not going to see, oh, it's because the wages are low. It's because the unemployment's so high. She's going to see it as he's a failure. It's about him. As far as she's concerned, her poverty is due to a man she has no love for anyway. So she's going to blame him and not blame the economic system, not blame the low minimum wage. Thatcher's sleight of hand by removing welfare, putting burden onto the absent male, was employing misandry to derail socialism. Thatcher wasn't a feminist. Misandry in our society is supported by feminism, and in so doing, they're supporting a socialism derailing tactic. We can see that the origin is actually traditionalist roles. And there are two senses in which feminism derailed socialism. Because actually, feminism was absorbed into socialism straight away in Das Kapital. Marx was including feminist ideas that are pretty much drawn from Wollstonecraft, really. But there were two ways in which feminism derailed socialism. One is it sort of said, well, let's get our revolution sorted out first. Now, you know, the feminist revolution is going on forever. It's never going to be an end because they'll always find something else that is the next issue to deal with. So they've put socialism or the class struggle on a back burner until the struggle between the sexes is sorted out. And yet, at the same time, they'll ensure that the struggle of the sexes is never sorted out because they'll always find some other niggling thing to be the latest thing that they're worried about, like people asking them to smile or something. And the second way is it's divisive. And that's what has always prevented a sense of unity and universalism amongst the working class, is to create division so that we're not on the same side. And that's what they do. They create division. They go, well, no, I'm not concerned about them up there. I'm not concerned about the lack of people of humble origins in Parliament, people that went to comprehensive schools, and people from working class backgrounds in Parliament. I'm more concerned that there should be 50-50 men and women in the seats in Parliament, which is never going to happen. Or if it does happen, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel and having people like Jess Phillips in there, who's the one who's demanding that right now, demanding that not another male should stand for election as a Labour representative until there is 50-50 seats in Labour between the genders. Well, that's not going to happen because women are less likely to go to politics anyway, for lots of reasons, including childcare, and including the fact that women aren't thinking that excited about politics in the same way. If, in order to get those seats filled with women, we have to have women like Jess Phillips, I don't think it's worth it, quite frankly. But let's be clear here, it's a two-pronged misandrous attack that is derailing socialism. It's not just the feminists saying, let's sort our revolution out first, and making men the enemy and therefore dividing up the working class. It's also traditionalist misandry coming from the likes of Thatcher, which is saying it's men's responsibility to be the providers. They should be doing more providing. We should all shame the men that are failing to provide. And it's our right as women to be able to expect to be provided for as housewives. They're part of the problem too. we need women to step up to the responsibility of being breadwinners, equal breadwinners, and to see that as much a part of their sense of self-worth as it is for men, so that they consider workers' issues to be just as important as men do. I mean, there are older ways in which feminism has derailed socialism in the past. In fact, women were going to be given the vote in 1914. I say women, some women were going to be given the vote in 1914. Property owning women were going to be given the vote. This was be a way to divide up the suffragettes. So half of the suffragettes would say, yeah, done, sorted. In fact, the ones with the most spare time would have been able to go, yeah, done, sorted, we're all right now. Leaving the other half of the suffragettes that had less spare time not able to have the vote, and also not having the support of the suffragettes that did have the vote, in order to make sure that the vote had a higher proportion of property owners and therefore marginalise out the labourers. Actually, it didn't happen because war broke out. And when the vote eventually came in 1918, it was universal across the classes. So that didn't happen. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't be used later. There's been attempts for misandry to be used in the past to derail socialism. It kind of failed then, in that particular instance. In fact, it failed massively because by 1945 we had our first proper socialist government. Of course, I am ignoring Ramsay MacDonald as his only right and proper, because he's quite a controversial figure. One could even argue that he's a proto-Blairite. Flash forward to today, of course, and there is less sense of class anyway. We're all individuals now. So when you are a low-earning individual, you don't see yourself as working class. You just see yourself as a failure. And if you're a man, that stings more than it would if you're a woman. It stings because it's associated with shame. A company that started in the 1990s called No Fear. You've seen No Fear. And they produce t-shirts, and the t-shirts say things like, second place is the first of the losers. So that is this suggestion that there's increased failure shaming going on there with that t-shirt. No Fear as well. This is an example of performance of masculinity, because of course you think no fear, that's like courage, and courage is a really good masculine trait, right? And courage is a really good masculine trait. I think it is one of the masculine traits that I say that should be instilled in all human beings. All human beings should have courage instilled in them. The thing is, courage isn't about no fear. It isn't about denying fear. Courage is about letting fear inform you. In fact, I used to work in scare attraction. It's one of the things I used to say to the kids. Occasionally we had kids in there, and you go, well, this is not really suitable for kids, but if there were kids there, and I'd say, and I was playing the doctor character, the scientist character, I'd say to them, do you feel scared? And they go, yeah. Good, good. Fear's your friend. Makes you aware, heightens your senses. And it does. I mean, fear is your friend. If you're in a dangerous situation, fear is your friend, because it does heighten your senses. Improves your reflex reactions, as long as it doesn't rule you. It's got to inform you, but not rule you. And that's the nature of courage, is to allow yourself to be informed by fear, but still be able to do the thing that makes you scared. That's the nature of courage. Courage isn't no fear. No fear is a performance of courage. It is not real courage. Real courage is allowing fear to inform you and still doing what you have to do. That's what real courage is. No Fear, even the name of the product, was a performance of masculinity. And as I say, they come out with slogans like second place is the first of the losers. So that is an element of loser shaming that we have in society. And it's because of the shame associated with failure that many of us have problems dealing with the problem of failure. when I was trying to deal with the concept of failure and was dealing with being positive about being a failure, I found one of the pieces of wisdom came from another doctor. And when I say another doctor, I mean the doctor. I find a great source of wisdom throughout my life. I think even the thing about courage I said came from the doctor. There's a robot in Robots of Death who is supposed to be investigating these murders taking place, and he realizes that he's made a mistake in his investigation, and he says, "I have failed." And the doctor says, "Yes." And then he realizes that actually the robot's completely given up. Failure really affects him. So the doctor turns around and says, Yes, you failed, but well done. Failure is one of the basic freedoms." Go, yeah. Failure is one of the basic freedoms. We have the freedom to fail. And it shouldn't be a source of shame, because if it is a source of shame, that makes it harder to rise up again to the next challenge. In the same way as if feminists are talking about dealing with fat shaming, you deal with failure shaming and being able to accept positively that one has failed and not allow that to deter you from continuing to struggle. Yeah. So if failure feels like a punishment, and failure is a possible result of taking a risk. Every time you take a risk, you run the risk of failure. If failure feels like a punishment, that means that repeated punishments stop you from taking risks. If you stop taking risks, then our chances of success are greatly reduced. So we need to take the sting of shame out of failure. Stop seeing it as something to be ashamed of. And this is quite separate from the socialism thing. So there's two sides to this. One is from a personal point of view, and so there's probably people that are listening to this that bloody hate socialists. God, fucking hell, bloody socialists. Socialists are the cause of all the problems. They'll be saying, if that's your case, that's your take home from this, is that we still need to take the sting out of failure, because we need to take the sting out of failure because people need to keep trying. But secondly, if you are of the same political bent as I am, we have to take the sting out of failure, because if it's unjust, if your failure is caused by forces outside your control, which we need to unite against, then we need also to not feel ashamed in order to stand alongside other failures to bring about some kind of change. And secondly, since women do hold a greater proportion of the vote as men do, they've got to feel that it is important to them, as it is to us, that they are providers too. We can't have this divvied out anymore. We can't have the burden of responsibility divvied out to one gender and not the other, particularly when that gender is the gender that has least leverage as part of the voting community. We can't have men being the scapegoats to blame women's poverty on, particularly when he's still the one doing the work. Also, there's another thing, of course, is how one defines failure depends on how one defines success. Perhaps the financial is not the only way that one can judge one's success. One can be successful in lots of other ways. I don't think right now I can offer up a comprehensive conclusion to all this. This is just one blind man offering up his latest findings into the investigation of an elephant. Other opinions are both available and welcome. And remember, the best awareness raiser of all is our own curiosities. Cheerio.